democracy, because that is what is at stake. This new geopolitical world has grave implications for the curbing of climate change, the promotion of human rights, and the protection of national security. Citizens around the world need a more concerted effort to manage global security tensions, and a more careful but determined human rights strategy, both adapted to these times and designed to ensure that the post-Cold War era transcends the war in Ukraine and turns into, at least, a cold peace. For the United States, such an effort must include a much more careful and coherent diplomacy with both Russia and China, aimed at establishing a détente that is based on a mutual non-subversion understanding. It must also instigate substantial reforms in domestic policy aimed at establishing resilience and reinforcing a more egalitarian order. Enhancing liberal security, promoting prosperity, and supporting human rights calls for reasserting international rule of law principles, reaffirming existing alliances, addressing domestic inequalities in some liberal democracies, and improving trade regimes. All are necessary to foster conditions for better times in international relations. Fortunately, while there is a danger of a Cold War, there is no danger of replaying the Cold War. Cold War II is unlikely to be as extreme as Cold War I. Three factors weigh against escalation. The first is a rational appreciation of the likely costs of a Cold War between the United States and China. One need only recall that China has had an economic growth rate more than twice that of the United States, a GNP close to that of the United States, and a population 3 times that of the United States. The second is an unprecedentedly large global common interest in mutually dependent prosperity and protecting the planet from environmental deterioration. The third is that Russia and China are authoritarian, not totalitarian. Putinism is not Stalinist communism, Shiism is not Maoism, and no one is a Nazi. Yet the United States, Russia, and China are unlikely to establish a warm peace, such as that enjoyed within Western Europe or between Europe and the United States and its other allies. None of the powers are unusually aggressive. In recent years, the United States did invade Afghanistan and Iraq, the latter on the basis of very faulty intelligence, and intervened with allies in Libya and Syria. Russia invaded Georgia and Ukraine twice. China asserts territorial claims over the South China Sea and demands sovereignty over self-ruling Taiwan. The deeper source of global conflict is defensive. The United States and its allies do not want to impose democracy by force. They want to make a world safe for democracy, in which national security is affordable, elections are secure, markets are free, and in which human rights remain an ideal. China and Russia do not seek to impose autocracy for its own sake. They, correspondingly, seek a world safe for autocracy in which governments are free to have or not have elections, and human rights, markets, and information are subject to state direction, and no one outside the government questions state policy. Both sides are threatened because those two visions, both systemic, so-called milieu goals, are incompatible unless both sides agree to difficult compromises. Restoring the prospect of diplomatic accommodation will be difficult after the shock, war crimes, and severe retaliatory sanctions generated by the invasion of Ukraine. But even the worst wars end. Cold War détente followed the war in Vietnam and the Soviet invasion of Czechoslovakia. Cold War strife can develop into a compromise, a Cold Peace détente, if a non-subversion pact can be implemented. That is, if neither side